Welcome back.
Welcome back, girl. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. We actually didn't see each other over the weekend.
No,
so
which is a shock.
Bummer.
That too. I know. It was hard.
I had a good weekend despite the fact I wasn't with you. So, I mean, I guess there's silver lining there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Samesies. I'm glad you had a good weekend. I did too.
Yeah. Is there anything like notable that we want to talk about quick?
From our weekend?
Yeah.
I made soup.
Oh, yeah. And it wasn't too chunky either.
No.
Which is like the best kind.
Yes. It was real good. How was your weekend?
I had a girls' weekend for a pal's birthday, and it was really nice. We spent 90% of our time at an Airbnb, and it was the best.
I love that.
Yeah, me too. So, should we get into it?
I think we should get
Why
into it.
are we here today?
We are here to talk about imposter syndrome.
Which is a big, big thing that everybody struggles with.
Yeah. Whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
Let's add that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was telling Jen when we came in here that I was kind of surprised when I had brought it up to a couple of people in my life that they didn't really, like, it's not that they hadn't experienced it, but they just didn't know what the term was for that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, whether you know it or not, I guess was like my point with that.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, if you don't know what it is, I can provide a little definition.
Yeah, do it.
Okay. So the definition of imposter syndrome is the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. So basically, regardless of your physical output or the successes that you have, no matter how many you get of those or how often you see like the fruits of your labor, you still believe that you are not able to do said task,
right.
Kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with that being said, I think a big thing that we should probably say disclaimer again, huh?
Yeah. Disclaimer. We're two girls. So we have two opinions. Sometimes opinions align.
Yeah.
Whether it's our opinions collectively or your opinions. If for some reason you don't agree with what we're saying, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
No need to make a fuss about it. Go watch another podcast. Go listen to something else.
Exactly. And we're not offended if you choose that this doesn't align with
right.
maybe what you want and your thoughts and opinions, and that's totally cool. But we just want to put it out there that we're two opinions of many, many other people, and there is no one person alike. So we just hope that you can take something away from the info that we're providing today.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jen, to Yennefer. That's what I call her if anybody watches.
With a Y.
Yeah, with a Y. If anybody watches The Witcher, there's Yennefer, who is a witch, basically. And Witch. Anyways, it has nothing to do with Jen. Jen does not give off witch vibes, but that is where I got the nickname from. But I want to turn it over to Jen because I think that it's important for people to kind of hear our experiences with it, and then we can give them a little piece of advice moving forward.
Absolutely.
So hit it.
I'm going to hit it.
Hit it.
I'm going to do it right now. Okay. So let's keep in mind I'm 23. I am only starting to get into my career at the moment, but so little backstory. I was in college for 4 years, and then right after graduation, I interned with you at Pop and Dot for 6 months, and now I'm in my first graphic design position at UWS. So
heck yeah.
That's a little recap, but I think where I want to start this is in the college days, right? So for those who don't know, in the graphic design field, and I'm sure other art fields as well, you do little critiques, crits for short, of your work, where sometimes you're just putting it on the board and sitting at your desk. Sometimes you go up front and present it, and then your peers and professors give you feedback on work, right? That's something that we did pretty much every day.
And it's terrifying.
It is kind of scary.
Because honestly, in my opinion, professors aren't the worst part. It's your peers.
Yeah. I get that.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, I am my own worst critic. But I agree, though. It's scary to just like stand in front of 20 people and a professor who's been doing this for God knows how long. And just like take the feedback. I love getting feedback. Don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
it's terrifying.
Isn't it crazy though? So Jen and I are very similar. We're not people pleasers necessarily like through and through, but we tend to be like overly kind in situations where some
Yeah.
people they have the attitude of like I don't care, this is how I'm feeling, so this is how I'm going to say it. So for somebody like us, we're very careful of the words that we choose and like how that may come off to people. So I'm assuming that in critiques, and you can kind of elaborate more on that, that's exactly how you are when critiquing other people's
Yeah.
things. But it is crazy the opposite, where there are some students that will go in on you and they
Oh,
will
yeah.
have no mercy.
Uh-huh.
But they're the ones that did the assignment the night before. And they expect, and then they get pissed when the professor doesn't like it or something. But
Fair enough.
nonetheless, continue.
So where I was going with this is A, it's scary to get that feedback, but really good and healthy at the same time. But B, I think what college doesn't really prepare you for, and mind you, this is just my experience, like it's probably different than yours. It's probably different from other people listening to this as well. But in my career, I get really good feedback from my boss, and like I like showing my team members the stuff I make, whether like it matters to them or not. I just always like when people provide things and let me know what they're thinking. But
And different perspectives too.
Oh.
It helps you do your job better.
absolutely. I think college didn't really prepare me for the amount of feedback I would be getting in the sense of in college I was getting a lot of good feedback, I feel, and ripped apart a couple times, which is good, it happens, but I don't really get that in the world, right? Or in my job at the moment. So I feel the imposter syndrome comes with, okay, when I started this position, I was 22, right? Fresh out of college, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be getting feedback all the time. Like, it's going to be really great. People are going to give a lot of guidance.
Right.
Like they did in college. And I think it doesn't really prepare you that it's not going to be that way.
Oh, yeah.
And you might feel this way too, because you're the only graphic designer at Pop and Dot at the moment, you know, like
it's hard to like trust your gut instinct, because even though like you're fresh out of school, and I mean, not fresh, you're going on almost a year, but
that's
I mean,
fresh.
Even for me, like I'm almost 30. And so to have been out of school for almost like 7 years, it's like I still feel like I'm very new to this. So I can't imagine like being back in the footsteps of just like a fresh grad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, a little backstory at my job. So I'm the graphic designer for pretty much everything except for athletics and continuing education. So someone does the athletic stuff and somebody does the other one that I mentioned. And then I do just about everything else, which is cool. I love it. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I'm really the only designer for all of this. And these people just trust me.
Yeah. You're like, you almost like need their feedback to be a little more harsh, because I was even telling this to you before we started this podcast. I was like, don't feel like you just need to say yes or agree on something just because like I'm proposing it. And sometimes it's hard to think that people are just genuinely agreeing with you, especially if it's frequent. So if you're bringing ideas to the board and designs and they're just like, yep, cool.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if other people feel this way in their profession, but that is very rare to get.
Yeah.
Very rare. And I'll get into that later, but I know that you probably feel this way too with school, is when you're getting feedback, you're always getting constructive feedback. It's rarely ever, yep, that's good to go.
Right.
In the first round.
Never.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. Like, I felt in college, and I mean, they always tell you this, right? In any profession that you could get feedback from, which is all of them, let's be real. They're always like, okay, don't just tell people that you like something or blah, 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 which I totally agree with. I love getting like actual criticism. And I'm lucky, like in my career at the moment, I get really good feedback from my bosses and stuff. But for me, it's just the mind fuck of being like, okay, I'm 23 and these people just trust me. Like I'm the expert here.
Do you think that your age has a lot to do with it?
I think in my experience, probably.
Okay.
I think it's also the fact that I don't have a ton of experience in my field, which is fine. I feel like in graphic design, that's kind of how it is. Like I'm so lucky that we became friends and I got an internship through you, because a lot of my peers didn't have that right after college. I know a lot of people who are still actively looking for graphic design jobs. And that's another point I want to bring up. The hiring process for jobs, also a lot of imposter syndrome. And actually, today I experienced this. A job I applied to in July just got back to me today.
You're
in
kidding.
January. They said that they decided to like actually not hire for that position at the moment, like something.
Send out an email.
They did in January.
Can I put in a quick side note here? I think that, and we will probably cover this in a couple of different episodes, but I just want to say, if you can practice good email professional skills and just communication in general, communication is literally the thing that binds us all together. It creates such a smooth route for just anything that you need to get done, especially if you're working with multiple people. Or let's say, like, put yourself in that position. You're applying for a job. Maybe you're struggling to find a job because graphic design and marketing positions are just very hard to find in general in smaller towns. And I mean, what, Duluth's like 80,000 to 100,000 with surrounding areas, but that's still really small because you're not in like a metropolitan area. So with that, you have people that are waiting, literally waiting, watching their emails for you to respond, and you don't have the courtesy to let them know in a month that you've just decided not to hire for that position anymore. That's ridiculous. I'm guaranteeing that you have people that you could designate that task to be like, hey, draft up a newsletter or just draft up, you know, a joint email to all the people who applied and let them know. So I'm sorry I went on that tangent.
No, it's okay. I agree with you.
I'm offended for you because that's just, it's poor taste.
I agree.
Yeah.
So where I was going with that is there aren't a ton of graphic design jobs in this area, which sucks. But at the same time, like when you do hear back from one of those positions, in my head at least, and it might not be for anyone listening, you might not agree with this. Alex, you might not agree with it either. But I'm like, well, shit, do I even deserve this? Like, do I even deserve this interview? I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot of really great designers, and especially with everything on social media at the moment,
that's how people get hired
videos constantly.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, that's how I kind of got hired, reaching out on your social media. But
yeah, that's kind of wild to think that it's almost like getting TikTok famous. Like if you do not have an online social media presence, a lot of these jobs that you feel are unattainable or that you would never have the chance to do. I think there was a gal that I met over the weekend, and she does email marketing for a brand that is well known in Target. And to meet somebody that just seems like such a high end position, and she works remote in Duluth. I'm like, how did you find that?
No kidding.
And I'm fairly certain that she said that she found the opportunity online, or she had to like, it's not something that's just readily available.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, the imposter syndrome with that just comes with not feeling good enough to even like deserve an interview.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's A, my age, and B, that I don't have the experience level that people are looking for. But also, like, I just realized to not let that stop me. So that's my 2 cents on that.
And that's on growth.
Oh, absolutely. Another thing I want to bring up is I feel like sometimes it's easier to think that the success that you're achieving and being granted in your life is, what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. Keep talking. Luck.
That's
yes.
the word I'm looking for. That was a total brain fart moment.
Hey,
sorry,
that's okay.
besties, but
this is the type of podcast where we're probably going to lose our train of thought multiple times. Like I said, I'm entering my 30s. I'm basically geriatric, so it's going to happen.
Oh my God. Yeah. So luck, or you got something by chance. In my mind, it's really hard to wrap my mind around the fact that like I actually am talented.
Yeah.
And I have skills that people see in me, which that's sad. But at the same time, it's easy to be like your own worst critic.
For
so.
sure. And like, let's say that you're in a job, like interviewing process, or you're applying for a lot of different jobs. You are entering and living in that self-critical mode
Oh, absolutely.
for almost the whole time until you get that job, because if you want to get better as a human and as a person in your profession and all these things, like, you're going to sit in that until you feel like you've gotten it done.
Yeah. And I feel like that comes with holding myself to a really high standard. Like, I don't like failing.
Which is a good and bad thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a human. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to fuck up. You know what I mean? But
you need to fuck up, though.
yeah. It's good
so
too.
good. I'm glad
And
you said that.
That's a really good thing for imposter syndrome, I think. And with that being said, I'm going to look at my notes because I made a little funny in my notes.
Oh, okay.
This is how I combat the demons. Okay?
Those demons.
Yeah. So, number 1, self-work and self-reflection. And I wrote, to me, this means focusing my energy somewhere else instead of worrying that I'm not enough, worth it, or I just came across this situation by luck. And I wrote down, it's not a direct quote from this book that I'm reading, but it is a note, a little cutie that I've learned. The truth is, you were born worthy, and you haven't done anything in your life to be undeserving of this experience, or your job, a relationship you might be in, or etc. That's something that I really needed to hear. I feel in this book that I'm reading, it's about like dealing with perfectionism and focusing your energy on things that actually deserve it instead of being perfect and a people pleaser all the time. But it's talking about how you were already born perfect, right? You haven't done anything to not be deserving of these experiences, but at the same time, you're allowed to not be perfect. You're going to make a mistake, and that's a part of the human experience.
Yeah.
You know?
Think about it this way. What if when you make a mistake, you're still considered perfect? Because if you are born perfect, it's expected you will make the mistakes. So that is not an imperfection if you're making a mistake.
That is exactly the concept of the book that I'm reading.
Oh my gosh.
I don't even need to read it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex is
Case
the book.
closed. Case closed.
Yeah.
That's a summary. What's the name of the book?
A Perfectionist's Guide to Letting Go.
So if you want a quick summary, so I can save you, depending on how fast you read, it's about accepting that making mistakes is part of being perfect because it's designed, baby. Oh.
That's a
Ooh.
That's a really big part of that book.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we're agreeing.
Okay.
I love that.
Cool.
The next one I wrote down is stop looking for everything to be perfect, which I'm looking at the camera because I need to remind myself that.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah. It's easier said than done, but I've been coming to terms with accepting that things are going to be out of my control, mistakes are going to happen, and like we were just saying, that's life. That's the human experience, right? You're going to go through things where, like I've been ranting about this entire time, you don't feel deserving. You feel like the shit that you're coming across is just luck, or I got this really awesome job at UWS by chance. And I mean, I kind of did in the sense of I like ran into it and found it by chance, but I got it simply because I'm deserving of it.
Right. But you also have to think of how many things that you had to do, mistakes, triumphs, all those things that led you to earning that. You know, like there was a process, decisions that you and only you made that if you wouldn't have made it that way, you would not have stumbled upon it. So
right.
So really you do have more control. It's just it's not control that you're aware of in the time.
Yeah. Another thing I want to bring up is this is bullet point number 3. I think I'm at right now.
We don't count here.
It's just reminding yourself of all of the great achievements and things that have gotten you to where you are today that make you deserving of where you are, right?
Absolutely.
For me personally, I'm 23, okay? I have a lot of things that I haven't experienced in the world yet, and there's a lot that I still need to learn about myself. But if I want to really take a second and reflect on why I'm deserving of this job, why I'm deserving of being a podcast host right now. I'm 22. I'm 23. I'm a liar.
This podcast is not about telling the truth. It's about telling our opinion. And
You're
if
right.
your opinion is that you're 22, girl, I'm right there with you. I'll
It's
be
like
22
Taylor
as
Swift
well.
said, you're always 22, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where I was going with this is I'm 23. I'm going to fuck some shit up. I'm going to make mistakes, okay? But the reason why I'm qualified is I have an awesome degree. I got a really good education, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I have so much to learn about the world still, but I had a really great internship that taught me a lot of really great things.
I love to hear that. Yay.
Yeah. That's mainly my 2 cents about this. Just like reminding yourself that even though you're going to mess some stuff up, you're going to make some mistakes, and you're going to feel undeserving at times, you are. You just got to remind yourself why you're a baddie.
That's a part of the process, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool.
What about you, Al? What are you feeling in this moment?
Okay. So I appreciate everything that you had to say, and I believe why your perspective is really important on this podcast is because there are people like me who are in kind of the same realm. They're a little bit later in their 20s or maybe like early 30s, and they have been shown that they need to have it all figured out by this time. I mean, that's what I was taught at your age, and that's why I have my perspective and it's important, but yours is because you're kind of speaking to this whole new audience that's just getting out of college, that's a young professional. That is so important because I don't feel like there's enough people in your position right now sharing experiences, because I'm sure they're not starting a podcast because they don't think that they can do it,
Right.
that their opinion doesn't matter. It's the imposter syndrome of thinking that their experiences aren't matured enough to even go about it, which they are. And with that being said, I appreciate you opening up and always sharing how candid that is, and like the tips and tricks that you took to kind of make it work. And if anybody has questions for Jen specifically, if you feel like you connect with her at like where she's at in life, please leave them in the comments. We'll always try and get around to any questions that people have in the next episode. And Jen will reflect on them and try, even if it's outside the scope of graphic design. That's kind of the point of this podcast, is we can all connect with each other regardless of what career path we're in.
I think you just brought up a really interesting point. And before you start, I just want to give my 2 cents on this. You said something about like not feeling like your experience or your voice matters. And I definitely felt that. Not like right when you asked me to start a podcast, but when I was starting to like share with my friends and people that were really close with me about it. I remember the first person I told about it, we were like sitting, eating dinner, and I was like, yeah, Alex and I are going to start a podcast. Like, I'm super excited about it, but also like scared, you know?
Absolutely.
And the person I was talking to was like, well, Jen, why are you scared? Like, this seems really cool. It seems like you're really excited and passionate about it. And like, you know things about design, so people are going to want to listen to you. And I remember being like, yeah, but does my voice even matter? Like, do people even want to give a shit about what I say? Do they even want to listen? And this person was like, well, of course they do.
Yeah.
And if they don't, who cares?
But I feel like that's the whole point of being human and getting to know people and making connections with people maybe that you wouldn't have expected, is because maybe in that first conversation you don't take anything away, but there's always something that a stranger can provide that you can take away from. Either you take away that same concept, or it's something that just gets the wheels turning and you're like, wait, that made me think about something either about myself or like what I'm doing. And that's what this podcast honestly is. And I'm happy you shared that. And I'll kind of touch on my imposter syndrome that I'm dealing with right now because it's very similar. But you bring up a really good point that, that it's just, that's very current. It is very well current in the world. But thank you for saying that. So I would say for me, maybe I had dealt with imposter syndrome in high school, but I just feel like I had so many different other feelings like emotionally going on where I was like, oh my God, puberty is crazy, you guys.
There's a lot going on.
So I would say like the first time I was aware of it was in college. I found it very hard to be bouncing around all these different departments and different degrees when I had friends who wanted to be a nurse for as long as they can remember, and so that's what they're going to be. It's just, or like somebody, I have a really close friend who she wanted to be in broadcasting, and she had basically this dream since she was younger, and then she had landed a job at a local news station, and she had that job, basically her full-time job, she already had through all 4 years of her degree when she was at college. And for me, it's like, not only did I find it inspiring, but because I didn't have such a good reflection and like view of myself, I kind of made myself feel bad because I didn't have that trajectory already planned out.
I feel
But
that.
yeah, and maybe that's just maybe a struggle that creatives go through. Whether you're an artist, you've always been told like, oh, you're a starving artist, like there's no possible way that you can make a career out of that. But the cool thing about being an artist and being a graphic designer is that it truly does stem into so many different realms. Like, you'll probably work with so many different types of businesses. Like, think about all the departments that you work with on campus. None are the same, all are different, and you have to design accordingly, but you also kind of have to be knowledgeable about that.
Right.
And then same thing for me, a lot of my part-time jobs after and during college, I pull a lot of inspiration and knowledge from what I took away from that, and I apply that to my graphic design. So every experience that an artist has, that can be put, and that energy can be put towards something else, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So college was a really pivotal point for me. It kind of felt like I was starting to feel that if I wasn't completely overwhelmed, I say this to my family all the time, that I feel like as a millennial, sometimes, even though I was at the tail end of it, we've kind of been put in this rut to be like, hey, if you're not doing everything you absolutely can, like if you have extra time at the end of the day, you're not doing enough. Simply, that's just what it is. I had worked with somebody at a part-time job at the mall, and I remember I was working part-time there. I had a part-time job at Caribou, and I was also on the women's hockey team in college too. So I was doing all those things, and she was working 4 or 5 jobs. And she told me while we were working one time, because I think that I maybe called in or I was stressed out and I was like, I just need to have somebody cover this shift. She was upset with me because of her. She thought that because she could balance 4 or 5 jobs, that I should be able to handle the few things that I do have. I know. Regardless, I take those experiences now and I'm like, okay, she might have been dealing with something and projecting a little bit onto me.
Of course.
She's also in a management position, and I could see how somebody who's younger, if they're calling in, it's kind of like the typical thing. But that's something that stuck with me because I almost felt like I needed to prove to myself and to her and be like, oh, well, I'll do more then. Because clearly I'm disappointing you, which in turn you're telling me to be disappointed in myself because I'm not pushing enough. Yeah. So that's probably where I started, like putting on a couple extra hats. I kept my part-time job at Caribou Coffee. I kept playing full-time hockey, full-time student. I even had classes in the summer, probably because I switched my degree a couple of times. But even outside of that, I added more things on. Like, I self-taught myself to do wedding makeup. So then I would do weddings on the weekend. And there were just things that I could have just been enjoying my innocence and my youthfulness and taking my free time to not try and work myself to the bone, because I really wasn't making money. I was just overwhelming myself with all these different responsibilities. And so that was in college. And now with all of the jobs that I've had, the imposter syndrome really was in my last position before I moved here. I was in charge of event planning, and I remember that it was my first salary job. I had director in the title of my name, and I remember I would get to the office every morning, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, and I would sit at my desk and I would just kind of like hover my hands over the keyboard, and I would feel so anxious and so overwhelmed and be like, I don't know how you got this job. I don't know how you have a job that has benefits right now, where you have a retirement plan that somebody else is taking care of for you. Like, you have PTO, like, and you're a director of something, like, of the only person in this department. You are responsible for all these things. And I had no idea what I was doing. But I'll go over this as even if somebody just sees potential in you, you need to like take that as a compliment, not be so hard on yourself, and then give yourself the opportunity to rise to the occasion and like do that.
Yeah.
So now I co-own a business with my dad, and this is really tough to talk about because I feel like I still deal with this all the time, is a lot of people see it as his business. You and I talk about this all the time.
All the time.
I would say we are equally responsible for things, but it does make me, when I hear those comments from people, or even if they're like slight comments, like they're not really directed and that's maybe not the intention of it, but, and this could be the imposter syndrome of just like my anxiety kicking in, being like, oh, that's what they meant, is that they don't see you as an equal, it's your dad hired you. And that is a really interesting part of our business, is that we have separate strengths from each other. We could not operate without one another.
Right.
And that's just what I hope that I continue taking away and working on that. But it's, and I'll now touch on the podcast thing, is even though this was my idea initially and this is what I wanted to do, I was scared as fuck to do it, because I think of all the people that are like, oh my God, another podcaster. And they're just small time, it's not, we are not produced by anybody. We're figuring this out as we go. Like
it's
our video, if I'm looking at the video randomly, it's because I'm hoping that it doesn't stop all of a sudden. Same thing with our audio. It's just like, we're just figuring it out as we go, and that's okay as long as the end product is good. But when we were starting out, I almost didn't want to let you down too, because I had such a good passion and such good intentions towards this, that even though the initial thought that brought me to this with you, knowing that we have really good advice and we love to talk and share our stories with people, that almost wasn't enough in moments. So that's why I'm really happy you brought that up, because this is really scary for Jen and I. We are now going to be subject to being kind of put on the spot. Like, we never want to put each other on the spot, but there may be moments where we ask a question and our initial response triggers somebody or says something to somebody that isn't positive, and we have to wear that. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. But I think what's great for us is that we're going to have to get used to that. Yeah. And it's a fear that we'll overcome it for the time being, and we're going to just be better because of it. Yeah. So with that being said, I also have my pieces of advice that I think are really important to kind of elaborate on. So my first one is, imposter feelings are very normal.
Oh, yeah.
Like we said at the beginning of this episode, if there are two people in this world, there are people that have felt imposter syndrome, and then there are liars.
I would agree with that completely. I'll stand behind that.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. You second?
I second.
All who second, say I. I. Great. Okay, number 2, feelings are not facts. This is something that I actually work with my therapist a lot, because I am a huge overthinker. It's like I'm an anxious person. My thoughts just start reeling, and before you know it, it's like you're caught in this constant cycle. And a lot of it has to do with work and just like what I produce, and making sure that my interactions with people are genuine and I'm putting out my best foot forward, kind of a thing. But just because I'm feeling something in the time does not mean that that's exactly how it went. Right. So that's really important to keep in mind, is if you have an interaction with me or somebody else, whether that be work or personal, take a minute if you're feeling something, and don't react in the time that you're actually having that conversation. Go home, think about it, take some time apart, and don't react. Just think like, where are the feelings sitting? Like, am I getting a physical reaction from it? Is there something that brought up that kind of brought me back to a really negative place? Like, what is it that made you feel like you were having those negative feelings about yourself? Because when it comes to imposter syndrome, if you can kind of like be smarter than your brain, you're already in a really good place. If you can kind of like regulate those thoughts, that is probably, I should have moved that to number one, because that's the biggest thing, is that just because you feel that way, sorry, but that doesn't mean that that is actually the reality.
Right. That's a really good point.
So a third one is know your imposter moments. So being able to recognize if you're slipping into those tendencies. You know, I wish that when I was sitting at my keyboard every day trying to get the guts to operate at the same level as all these other directors, and I was really young at the time too, was being able to notice that and then just be like, okay, I'm feeling a little out of my element today. I don't know what I'm doing. I should have just asked for help, you know, or just like been transparent with my boss, like, hey, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I maybe need a little bit of reassurance in the time.
Yeah. I would just like to add,
Yeah.
asking for help is such a big part of overcoming this for me, and I'm glad it is for you too.
Yeah.
In my current job, I remember, like, I don't know the exact timeline of how long I felt like this, but at least for the first couple of weeks, I was like, okay, I'm the expert. I must know everything. They trust me to know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
No questions asked or needed, whatever. But I am really lucky to say that I have found it's easier to ask for help when you make really great relationships with these people, right?
Absolutely.
So I would just like to speak for myself and say that I love my coworkers so dearly. They make me feel really comfortable in needing to ask for help. I've never been faced with like, well, you're the fucking expert, why don't you know this?
Right.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, like, we hired you for a reason. Why are you coming to us? Like, we're not graphic designers.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I
But
totally get that.
yeah.
Kind of piggybacking off of that is have a good circle. You need to have somebody who you trust, where you're like, I'm feeling really vulnerable right now. I feel like I'm not doing a good job. Like, I can't do my job. That I'm going, you know, it's like, it could be like very serious thoughts that you're having, like, should I change my career? Should I uproot everything that I've known and take this plunge? Like, especially maybe if you're like trying a new endeavor or something new that's really scary to you, like this podcast. If somebody you know is, if you yourself are starting a podcast or whatever that may look like to somebody, if you don't have people that you trust going to, being like, hey, I'm scared and I need you to reassure me that this is all going to pan out, or at least give me your honest opinion. Is this a smart idea? If you don't have people like that in your life, you need to get new people. Seriously. Make your circle smaller. Whatever that looks like, broaden your horizons on the type of people that you've usually hung out with. You need to have that support system.
Yeah.
Otherwise, unfortunately, us ourselves as individuals are not strong enough to pull out of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Really.
I would agree completely.
Yeah. Because I think about, like, I wouldn't have had this kind of epiphany at times if it weren't for me going through therapy, which is still reliant on somebody else kind of pulling me out of my tendencies and being like, hey, why don't we take a look at how you're talking about yourself right now? Like, give yourself the credit, you know? And
Sure.
sometimes we just need to have an external person to say that. And then the last thing that I'm going to say is get used to it, baby. Get used to the imposter syndrome, because she ain't going away.
So true.
She's like, what would a good analogy be for this? She's like oh, here's a good one. This has nothing to do with imposter syndrome, but it's the only thing that I could think of. She's like the oil stain on your favorite t-shirt.
It's just always there.
You either get rid of the t-shirt or you just live with it and then come to terms with her.
And you know what?
Yeah.
You might get an oil stain on another t-shirt.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly. You're just going to keep getting rid of your t-shirts. Anyways, the analogy was okay, but we'll stop elaborating on it.
I get what you're saying,
Maybe we'll come back to another episode and just be like, hey, we came up with something better that doesn't have to do with laundry.
Like 6 episodes down the line.
Yeah,
we're like,
hey,
guys, remember the first episode?
So yeah, get used to imposter feelings, because they're not going away, and maybe turn that into positive energy when you start.
Yes.
There's also this book that I read. If I can remember it, I'll bring it up at some other point, but there is this term in there that basically alludes to that. your subconscious, when you're about to do something scary, whether that be good or bad, just something challenging for you, because your brain wants to protect yourself and like your feelings, it's going to keep bringing up reasons why you should not be doing that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you want to break up with the boyfriend? Well, think about all the good times you had.
Think about when he didn't cheat on you.
Another episode. Also, oh, I want to quit my job. Well, oh, you got a really nice bonus last year. They were pretty cool when you wanted to have a couple of sick days, or maybe your kiddo got sick and they were really gracious and let you go. No, why do you want to leave that job?
Right.
That is the goal. Do not forget why you're actually doing those things.
Your feelings are extremely valid.
Valid, yeah, but don't ignore them. Even if they're
Right.
uncomfortable, get used to being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So important. So Jen didn't want me to put this in here, but I just think it's kind of funny. As a true Gen Z, Gen X correspondent that she is,
That would be
she sought advice from ChatGPT.
Yes. And I only did this because on Monday, it is Monday. Last Monday?
Okay.
I don't know when this was. I'm so confused. It
All
was
good.
sometime within the last week.
It was a day that ended in Y,
It
as
was
they would
last
say.
Wednesday. It was Wednesday. Brain fart. Okay, so it was Wednesday. They call it like opening day at UWS. So fall opening is like the first day of campus being open for employees. And then spring is when we're all back on campus in January, after some of us being a little bit remote while students are away for the holiday. But yeah, so Wednesday we had this big campus opening. And after the presentation, which I designed.
Yeah, you did.
They had
The whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
they were in a conference center,
Uh-huh.
essentially.
It was like a big, like, grand room.
A grand room.
Yeah.
They were in a grand room. And her slides were the only ones up.
Yeah.
Except I will say, I did see from what you had sent me that somebody changed them out of their own heart. I'm glad that they did that, but can I just say, as a disclaimer for people working with graphic designers, please trust them.
Yeah.
Trust them. If you want an edit or a change to something, let them do it, because they
Yeah.
poured their heart and freaking soul into whatever project it is, and it ruins the vibe.
And it was like literally one slide. It was not the biggest deal by any means.
It's a big deal.
But, okay. Somebody just like added an extra sentence but didn't change the font to match the font.
Oh my God, you
So-
didn't say that.
Yeah.
That's
a big icky.
that's
for
design
me, but-
suicide.
Well, it's okay though. It happened and I'm over it. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah. The point of this long rant
Here we go.
about UWS
Mhm.
is, so after the big presentation, which I designed, we did like a little Q&A with the chancellor's staff. So it was like the chancellor, the
That
provost.
seems so formal.
It kind of was.
The chancellors.
They like sat up front and they were passing mics to each other for like who would answer the questions. But
Oh, cool.
some of the professors were talking about how difficult it's been dealing with plagiarism because of
Mm.
ChatGPT. So long story short is, I'm bringing up ChatGPT because I wanted to see if it would give me some good fucking advice.
Yeah.
And you know what? It did.
Yeah.
It was basically like all of our talking points that we've already discussed, so I won't go into great detail.
I
but
made a joke though, and I was like,
yeah.
dang, even ChatGPT knows about imposter syndrome. Even a
Even
fucking
robots.
robot feels that they are not adequate enough. And
you know
that
what?
should speak to everything that we
It
said
speaks
today.
to a lot of volumes.
Yeah.
It speaks mountains.
It speaks mountains. Also, I do want to say UWS, I was not trying to throw shade. It's just, it's easy to say something like that because I'm so far removed from it.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like not the biggest deal
Right.
at all, but in the moment I was like, oh, I made these and now one thing isn't right, but that's okay.
Right, but also like to heal yourself from that because it was unexpected, like I wanted to be dramatic for you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I
you're
appreciate
welcome.
that.
So before we do like our closing statements and end the first episode,
Our first episode.
I want to leave everybody with this. This is super important. If you want to use this as an affirmation, if you just want to use this as something that you remind yourself with, it doesn't need to be something. I feel like with affirmations, people feel like it's like this healing thing, like it,
Right.
you know, it's giving therapy kind of a thing.
Like mumbo jumbo bullshit.
Yeah,
is the
exactly.
right word.
And affirmations are definitely seen like that. But if anything, write them down and just read it to yourself. It doesn't need to be this huge speech you have with yourself in the mirror every morning. But if you can repeat these words, I believe that they will help you kind of keep focused on what actually matters.
And I would just like to say before you get into this,
Mm-hmm.
I fully believe in affirmations. Okay?
Yeah.
Fist bump. We just fist bumped for those who aren't watching the video. But
Mm-hmm.
I told Alex when we were like writing down our thoughts and feelings for this episode that I actually recently made a little print for my bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
and it has 10 affirmations on it. I won't go through all 10, but it's basically like the premise behind affirmations is if you're going to print it out and put it somewhere, you need to put it in a place where you're going to see it every day
Mm-hmm.
and read it to yourself. And it doesn't necessarily have to be out loud, but the fact that you're reading something already puts you in that mindset. You're like, fuck yeah, I am going to kill this day.
Yeah.
I do deserve everything that the world is giving to me right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't chase, I attract. What belongs to me will simply find me.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And that's cool. And another thing is, seeing it every day is great, but if you want to take the route that's maybe just like for those people who are uncomfortable by the term affirmations,
Yeah.
because I know that I used to very much associate it with like journaling and being in touch with your feeling, you know, it's like
Spiritual.
yeah, like sometimes I'm a practical person and I'm just like, okay, well, give me something that isn't so like flouncy. That's not a word, but you know what I mean? Like it's like, kind of a thing.
Zhuzh.
Yeah. So when you say like know your imposter moments, kind of what I was talking about, maybe that's when you have what I'm about to say ready.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'm feeling these things again. I'm starting to doubt myself. Then this is what you should say to yourself.
Drum roll, please. All right,
All
mama,
right.
go.
This opportunity wouldn't be here unless I deserved it. This vision wouldn't be mine unless I was capable. It is no coincidence that I've made it this far, and I trust myself with new experiences.
I feel like I could start crying after hearing that. Long story short, for those who don't know, I used to be in a very dark place about this time last year where I just wasn't feeling good enough. I felt like complete and utter shit. To be honest, it was one of the lowest points of my life. And this is when I like started getting into affirmation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like reading that stuff at first or hearing somebody say that to you is so raw, powerful, emotional. It's extremely valid to be feeling what you're feeling,
Mhm.
and imposter syndrome definitely included in that. But these are really important things to remind yourself and
Yeah.
keep in mind. It's how I got to where I am today, honestly.
Absolutely. It's where everything that we have ever experienced in life is a culmination of the things that we didn't think that we were good enough to do, yet we did them. You
Mhm.
know, it's like, think about where you are in your career. You must have taken a leap for something. You must have done something to push yourself out of your comfort zone to get to that point. And I know that Jen will agree with this and we can wrap things up, but you deserve to be where you're at. You deserve to feel everything that you're feeling. It is okay if somebody's telling you the opposite. They are not a reliable source to be having those conversations with.
Absolutely.
Make that decision to separate yourself from it, because what this podcast episode is about is putting yourself fucking first.
Mhm.
Put yourself first.
Yep.
You want to achieve something, as long as it aligns with your values, you go for it, and you have every right to do that.
Mhm. I agree.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Whoever you are, we really appreciate it, because we don't know what to expect.
God,
with this.
no.
we really don't have high expectations. We have high hopes, but we won't be disappointed regardless of how this works. I hope that maybe if you guys feel comfortable, you can share your stories with us in a comment.
Absolutely.
Or if you want to reach out to us on Instagram, Alex Harum, Jen Kettner. We probably should have introduced ourselves at the beginning.
Hi,
Hey,
I'm Jen.
hey, I'm Alex. So if you've stuck in the 50 minutes of this podcast, you can, 50 minutes, babe. Mm-hmm.
Holy shit.
Man, can we yep on. But anyways, we'll close this out. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Be patient with us as we like grow and learn from this experience because it's new. Be kind to each other.
Yeah. I just want to add, I find comfort in knowing that one person finds this information valuable.
Same.
You know, if I genuinely help one person today, that is such a win for me.
I agree.
And I find a lot of comfort in knowing that by sharing our experiences, by sharing our thoughts, beliefs, and values, if one person feels like they're seen or heard, that is such a W.
That's a big ol' UWS, baby.
In the chat.
All right. We're out of here. We love you guys.
Peace, love, rock and roll. Goodbye.
Hell yeah. Rock and roll, babe.